What's going on? We're back with another episode of the 5280 podcast on the MHRT Network on this glorious, glorious offseason, 2 weeks before the draft happened. A week and a half. We'll go a week and a half. That'll work. Week and a half.
Crazy, right?
Right. And then we'll have like 1 day of cool things to talk about and then nothing again. It'll be fantastic. How's everybody doing tonight?
Well, I mean, yeah. Go ahead, Cam.
Oh, it's exciting. I mean, draft is next week. Avs are getting ready to have their playoff game. It's exciting.
So Cam was just telling us a little bit about he was in the flag football game on the infamous Denver media flag football game on Sunday. So any did you have any spectacular plays? Did you live up to your usual billing, or did you actually do something good this time?
First off, what's the usual billing? I guess, like, what is it that you've been hearing that is the usual?
I believe the consensus is that you get burned a lot, but
it's definitely one consensus.
Toast Parker over here.
Yeah.
I think we learned that from you, though.
Yeah. By the way, just don't let what I post on social media about me outrunning a bear actually think like I could truly outrun a bear.
No, the faster ones would be pushing you back.
Yeah.
I'm figuring like Teddy Ruxpin could catch up to him.
I wouldn't even catch up to Yogi Berra or Yogi Bear. But no, it was fun. Had a touchdown. Tried my best to catch every single throw from Mario. So did my best there. But it was fun. It's always good to hang out with the crew. Got a chance to hang out with basically the entire crew, if you will, from Let's Talk Broncos. I know that Frankie's a part of Let's Talk Broncos, and I think Robbie is too. But yeah, it was fun to kind of catch up with him.
Awesome, man. One of these days we'll be out there for that. That'd be great.
I think Rich
you were supposed to be there one time and they ended up canceling.
Yeah, I got canceled.
By the way, just FYI,
and I was not invited as a Denver media because I don't hardly considered that, but
we are not.
The rest of the people there were, so that was
I was gonna say, Rich. By the way, before you, just so you know, I think you may have to go after copyright because it looks like Rich said your comment like almost.
A gummy bear. There you go.
A Build-A-Bear. Yeah.
So first things first. Going in on, it seems like last offseason, going in on Russell Wilson. Dude flips a golf cart in a bunker this weekend.
With Justin Simmons.
No injuries, though. Apparently, was it Simmons that was driving?
That's according to a report. Yeah.
I saw a photo, and it was like one of the extended carts, and Russ was there, Sierra was there, and it looked like Cortland was sitting in the passenger seat of that particular cart. So I don't know. Yeah. The reports are that Russ wasn't driving. I just like this poor guy can't catch a break. Like, I mean, at least he made a joke of it. Today he tweeted out and was asking if people wanted to know how they actually finished up the hole that. But it is cool that he is hanging out with these other players, because and I wish it would become more widely known, all the guys that he does pal around with, because I'm just so tired of the narrative that his teammates don't care for him.
It legitimately feels like a smear campaign. Like that's kind of like what it truly feels like to me. And if we're going to make, a news story out of something, if it is Cortland Sutton, that's a significant deal because here's a guy that is reportedly on the trade block. And Russ is actually hanging out with him. So it's a big deal if it is. And I had to just kind of like scratch my head too, because it's like there was one story, I think it was like a Dallas reporter or like a Cowboys, Mavericks, I'll just say Dallas reporter, but like he said something to the likes of like the headline said scary golf accident. And it's
scary golf.
and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, what happened? Did he just like truly just forget to brake and it just crash like into the into a bunker or a tree or something. Like, no, it flipped over. Like, they were just making so much more of it than
it probably was the equivalent of like at the drive-in when the Flintstones, when Fred gets the brontosaurus rib and it tips over the car. I think that's kind of like the equivalent of what happened. Well, but not the scary like Toonces the cat driving off the cliff or Thelma and Louise.
Well, the other thing
like golfing accident.
The other thing that like made me think is like, so obviously people that, if you're a golfer, like sometimes like if you park a cart, I think the other thing is like they also could have just parked the cart, like on the hill or something, and then it just tipped over. Like, so I mean, it's just, again, like calling this whole thing like a scary accident is just like, it's once again, it's making way more about it than it truly needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's called clickbait. That's what
we're in clickbait season for sure.
That's what it's called. So let's continue on with the Russ is out with a person up for a trade, and let's go with the big news coming out of Arizona. Budda Baker is asking for a trade. So that means DeAndre Hopkins and Budda Baker both want out of Arizona. Is either one actually going to leave?
It's hard to say, but I mean, it seems like there's some validity to both of them wanting out. And it's understandable why some teams or teams fans or teams people like maybe want to inquire about those particular players. I just would rather like not get carried away on some of those trade ideas. Like truly carried away, like maybe a wide receiver and a safety and then swap both players. Like this isn't exactly Madden. This isn't exactly Madden. And it's also one that like, it's like selfishly, I want to see Caden Stearns succeed. Like I want to see Caden Stearns finally succeed. And, sure, you want to kick the tires on a guy like Budda Baker because of familiarity with Vance Joseph, but like, is Caden ever going to get his time to shine? Like, that's the thing. It's like, so it's, I don't know. And especially with the proven, unprovenness of the wide receiver room. Yeah, I get why people want him, but yeah.
It's not just a familiarity, Cam, in my opinion, with Vance. It's also the fact that he's a 5-time Pro Bowler, which doesn't hold as much water as the 2-time first team All Pros. 27 years old, would probably end up either doing an extension or getting somewhere close to 20, I would guess.
Mm-hmm.
But if you traded somebody that made a decent amount of money for him, you could probably offset a good chunk of that. But can you imagine a Simmons, Budda, and Pat Surtain backfield? I mean, that would be incredible. And Caden would still play a decent amount, in my opinion. And then you have Mathis in there, K1. I mean, this just could be like, he could be the guy that is covering, the Travis Kelce's of our division. That would be just so huge for us. And I think there's got to be some discussion about that.
Well, go ahead. No, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say that like the reason that I brought up potential trade person in Cortland Sutton is like, you would think that if we're going to go after Budda Baker, Cortland Sutton or a player of his caliber is the one that's going to be on the trade block to make the trade, because we don't have the picks to make that kind of trade for Budda Baker, right?
Well, and if
is it 1 player, 2 player, 3 players? What are we looking at to try to get Budda Baker?
Who knows? It's all dependent upon a team's price. Like at the end of the day, it's all dependent upon a team's price.
Albert Breer thought a second or a third would do it.
Just a second and a third.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it's just the second and the third, and if we're in the mantra of just screw it, just trade away the picks, sure, but because they do have like 5 picks, I doubt it. So, but I think from also a locker room perspective, also the addition of Budda Baker, Justin Simmons, that kind of tandem in the locker room, I think, would be extra special. And I know Bronco Bill mentioned a really good point, and then this is something we've not necessarily touched at length on, but he did say that, the Broncos and Kareem Jackson are talking, so it's possibly one that, like, if the Broncos are in the mode of bringing a guy that is familiar with Vance Joseph, they already had a guy like that, and a guy that was already has the chemistry with basically everybody in that room, right? So bringing Kareem back, who is obviously very beloved in the locker room, wouldn't be a bad idea either.
So let me just ask this question. Maybe I'm just an idiot, but are
the two different statements, by the way.
Are Budda and Justin the same safety, or is one free, one strong? Like, are we going to have them both on the field at the same time, or would?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, Budda can play linebacker. He could play all over the field.
Yeah.
I mean, that was crazy.
I think that's one of the reasons why people are wondering, do you move on from Caden Stearns? Because Caden Stearns would sort of fulfill that type of player that you could just roam him around anywhere, and just kind of use him in different facets. And that's kind of what you would see with Budda Baker, like just being like that. You can roam around anywhere. And Sports Nonsense and Whiskey brings up the fact that Jamal Adams went for 2 firsts, and there's obviously no way that a deal like that is going to happen. And oh, by the way, that trade hasn't exactly worked out well for Seattle. So, so I think that's the other part of this, is that trading for safeties, unless they are like a bona fide future Hall of Famer, they just really don't work out. They just really don't work out all that well.
And I know you talked about Kareem Jackson. I just don't know if I love Kareem Jackson on the Broncos. I love what he did. I like the idea of having him back, but I don't know if I want him back. Like, I think I'd rather have Stearns in there over Jackson. Like, you could see that he was starting to slow down. Mm-hmm. There were some, and I don't know if it was coaching all around, but there were definitely some lapses in judgment, some lapses in play recognition and things like that. I just don't know if I want Kareem Jackson back again. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And it's funny, like, we're talking about all these other players that we'd like to explore the possibility of joining the team. And it's like, and it's hard to say no disrespect to the guys that we're talking about possibly letting go in order to make that happen. But I mean, Caden Stearns, he's a guy I think the fans really are, on board with, and I think he could be. I want to see him out there too. I think he could actually do a terrific job. When Justin was out, he did do well. And it's one of those things too, is like Cortland, one of my favorite players on the team. It's that would be tough to lose him. But if you could get a defensive backfield like that, you have to give up something. And unfortunately, we don't have the picks to offer up, at least not this year. And do we want to get in a situation where we're already starting to trade away picks for next year? If they would take a second next year, I would do that in a heartbeat. I mean, and still keep our guys. But I do think they would, in order to absorb that kind of a contract, they would probably have to give up a guy making to over $10 million a year.
The other thing too is, like, with a guy like Kareem Jackson, it's one that's like, he probably understands his market, right? I mean, the guy's well above 30, so I mean, like, he also probably understands his market. So, like, if he's possibly going to be getting a deal, it's within roughly the exact same deal that he signed last year, if not less.
Thank you.
Yeah. So it's certainly one where it's like, if the Broncos wanted to make a move for Kareem Jackson, it probably would have already been done by now, right? And so obviously, even like the safety room isn't necessarily as deep with the draft this year, but they can still go out and draft a player like that, and two, who knows, even with the stuff with Vance Joseph and everything, because this is all just conjecture and projecting for the future. But like, who knows? Like maybe Vance also sees a future with De'Aaron Turner-Yell, the guy that they drafted, from Oklahoma. So yeah.
Oh, you got to pull up KB's comment. That's really funny.
That one. I wish we could do a cross sports trade. I'd trade Chris Bryant for Budda.
Oh my gosh. KB,
now, again.
By the way, KB, as an aside, Ken Booker was at the Nuggets game the other night. If you could drop in the comment just a couple thoughts about your experience there, I'd love to hear it. But I mean, Kareem Jackson has said that he wants to play 15 years. Whether that's going to happen, I don't know. But he would seem somebody that I wonder if the team would approach as almost a defensive assistant or defensive back assistant coach.
Yeah.
I don't know if he'd be interested in getting into that. I mean, he's probably made a decent amount of money in his career, so maybe he doesn't want to fall back into those types of hours and just ride off into the sunset. But I mean, the effect that, when you hear a lot of these polls, like when they ask the players, who's the funniest guy or who's this guy in the locker room or who's this guy in the locker room, for several categories, it seems like Kareem Jackson is a guy that they all are mentioning. I mean, he really has a massive impact on and off the field there. So I think there's going to be a lot of activity after the draft. Like you'll be seeing the fact that, we talked about the other day, Dalton Reisner's still out there. I mean, he's probably just waiting until after the draft, and any of the teams that didn't get a guard that needed one or some offensive line help because he can play other positions, would they reach out to him? The DNVR guys the other day were talking about, would you sign Dalton Reisner to a 1-year deal to play center? He played center at Kansas State, and it's like everybody was unanimous. Like, yeah, I'd be on board with bringing him in for something like that.
Yeah,
who was the better center though, like Reisner or Glasgow?
Well, they never gave Dalton the opportunity. They never wanted to move him off of, the guard position.
But I'm assuming Reisner would have been cheaper. Like if they brought, let's say it was between Reisner and Glasgow at center, Reisner would have been cheaper than Glasgow. You think? Like
I don't know what Graham got from Detroit, but he was a guy that I think there was a lot of disappointment from Broncos country that he was gone too. He did a solid job at center. I don't think anyone wanted him back for guard, but I think that people were open to the idea of Graham Glasgow being in center again.
And that's actually something we touched on, and I believe it was Maddie who brought it up on, mainly was the idea of Dalton playing center. So like this isn't the first that I've actually kind of like heard about potentially being a possibility, or just floating that out there, I should say. So I think it just, one more time again, it falls on the player. And does he want to do that, right? Like, does he want to do that sort of, role? Obviously, that is something that would probably be between agent Reisner and the team that, like the Broncos, to sign him. And so, and especially if you're sitting at like April, like we're recording this, right? Like on April 18th, like it's one of those things, like you would have to decide now, obviously, that you're going to sign this particular player or have a chance to sign this particular player after the draft. Because, I mean, for the entire month, if not, a little bit earlier, they've been all prepping for the NFL draft now. And so, so it's one that's definitely going to be happening after the draft.
The Lions signed Glasgow to a 1-year, $4.5 million contract.
So he got, I think he made less than that last year with the Broncos when they made him take a pay cut. He was originally $11 million a year. I'm just going to pull up KB's Nuggets experience here.
Yep.
So the atmosphere was awesome. Beer was delicious. I don't disagree with that. And I'm going to game 2 as well. All right.
Fantastic.
That was a tough one for me. The game was supposed to start at 10:30 my time on Sunday night.
Yeah.
It's a school night. And, it actually was extended. I think it was another 15 or 20 minutes before it started because the previous game went overboard or overtime. Extended time. So that was and I actually stayed up for the whole thing. I can't believe that. On a 30, that was just dumb.
Well, I feel like that those are kind of like those tip-offs, Glenn, that's like time zone just doesn't matter. Like right. It's such a late tip-off that it's like, I mean, what, it was like 8:30. Like, right. Well, we're 8:30, 8:40, 8:45, like at that point for us, Mountain Time, obviously 9:40 in Nebraska where Mike is, but it's just like, so it's like, it really doesn't matter. It's such a late game that it's like, you're just either really dedicated and you want to just stay up because this is the playoff game, or you just really can't go to bed, and so you want to watch the Nuggets game. But it didn't disappoint. I mean, it was quite the blowout for the Nuggets of Minnesota, and it was a nice little statement for them. Seeing Minnesota obviously saying we want Denver, right? Like saying we want Denver, and then in that game, Denver just beat them like a drum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was one of those. It was one of those games that reminded me of when Tiger Woods was in his prime, and you almost tuned in knowing that he was gonna that it was gonna be an absolute blowout, but you wanted to see how big of a blowout. And I think that's why it's ended up staying up so late. Like, how badly are they going to beat these guys? It was awesome. I mean, my dream final, and I hope it happens this year, is Nuggets Celtics. Obviously grew up with the big three, the Alex English, Kiki Vandeweghe, Dan Issel, Calvin Nat, Fat Lever, that whole group. And always watched the Celtics as a kid when they were on national TV. And then now that I live, 45 minutes from the Garden, it's one of those, that would be just a phenomenal matchup for me.
I was going to say selfishly, I'd love Nuggets and Sixers just because just because of the overall banter. That's what KB said. Like, just have it be Nuggets and Sixers and just, crybaby, Joel Embiid against Nikola Jokic. And if it is a series, he has to play in Denver, right? Like, he has to play in Denver. The guy who just, has completely avoided playing in Denver, he has to play in Denver to shut people up.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And we could have a Bruins Avalanche final. That would be pretty cool too.
Yeah.
Would it though? The Avs in the finals and Stanley Cup would be great, but against the Bruins, I don't know if I want that. Bruins are really good.
I'm talking about for me. Oh, I mean, the best regular season of all time. But other than that,
just that.
But still though, we're like the NHL playoffs is something that, like, I think that's the one thing that I love about the NHL playoffs is, like, it's one that's like it's anyone's game. Like, it's so open for everybody. I mean, like, there's times where an 8 seed has won the Stanley Cup, right? I mean, I think that was back when the Los Angeles Kings, went on their run and won the Stanley Cup. So, like, it's definitely a lot more open, for teams like that to win, the Stanley Cup. So I definitely, even though the Avs, won the division and everything, I wouldn't rule them out winning it again. I will say, I think it would be funny, and I say this from the Kroenke Sports airing their games kind of deal, but it would be funny if in back-to-back years, it's what the Avs and Nuggets did as far as forcing them to be on the air by winning in back-to-back fashion the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup. I think that would be really funny.
I don't know. I kind of want to see the Knicks because the Knicks have sucked for so long. Just awful. Kind of want to see the Knicks do something. But obviously Nuggets first. But
the problem is outside of Daniel Snyder, the Knicks have the worst owner in sports. So I mean, this is a guy that's doing facial recognition software, and anyone that's wronged him, he's kicking out of Madison Square Garden, and he even kicked out a lady, a lawyer who was doing a case against him, and she was like a Girl Scout troop leader, and he kicked her out of Radio City Music Hall because he owns that also. Like the Girl Scout troops in there for the Rockettes Christmas Spectacular, and this lady gets kicked out because this guy's so petty.
Yeah. Oh, to be rich.
You're talking about Rich A?
No, like have money. I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
You want to be Canadian? Okay.
You gotta throw the A. You gotta throw the A in there. Yeah, you're right. Canadian, eh?
Canadian, eh? All right, so I kind of want to, with last year, with how much promise we saw with the Broncos in the offseason. We pointed out a couple players we thought would hold the key to the season, who we thought would be the X factor for the Broncos. I want you to give me one. Who's going to be one player that is the X factor for the Broncos this year?
It's
I
hard
love surprising you with stuff. It's fun.
That's okay.
Hey, that's what's all about. Surprising us. I will say I was kind of waiting until after the draft to make that kind of call because,
nope.
The roster, isn't exactly finalized yet, and
quit stalling, Cam. I know what you're doing.
It's a media tactic. I have to build a house.
We're not media.
Yeah,
we're fans.
We're fools with microphones. Yeah. That's all we are.
We're people with Amazon accounts.
This is gonna sound like a cop-out answer right now, but I'm gonna say Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is the X factor, for this team. Just because it's one that he is, if he can take it to that extra level that he needs to under Sean Payton, this team is going to go maybe pretty far within this run. And I know that even Daniel Jeremiah on NFL Network said that the Broncos could be a 9-8 team. That's enough of a threshold where they might be able to make the playoffs. And if that's something that, where we see a Russell Wilson, where you see the efficiency back again, he's in that, I'd say 27 to 35 touchdown range. The interceptions are very low. I would not doubt the Broncos are going to be in a really, really good position if Russ is playing in a much, much better way in 2023. So I will say Russ. And
I was going to say Russ for much of the same reasons. I mean, I think it was an aberration last year. Mm-hmm. I don't believe he has permanently fallen off. I think there are a lot of factors that went into what happened last season, including an incompetent coach that was in way over his head, that let things get totally out of hand and got fired 15 weeks into the season. And probably
don't play dumb.
Stukes. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay. There we go.
But what was the guy's name? Ben Butch Beard?
Butch Berry. Butch Berry.
Whatever.
The vampire.
Butch Beard, I think, is a basketball player. That. So, but I'm going to go with Tim Patrick.
God, mother.
All right, let me change mine then, Mike.
No,
go ahead. If you want Tim.
No, I got another one. Go ahead.
I think I know yours because that would have been my other one outside of Russ. TP, when he went down, that whole team really lost its mojo. And that's when that was before the season even started. That was a devastating injury. He's back. He's already talking shit about the other teams, which I love. He was on Broncos Avenue and didn't hold back. It was great. I love that. When you can talk smack about teams that have been rolling over you for the last few years, I think it's pretty sweet. And I don't say that disrespectfully. I mean that I just love the confidence. And I think that, he could be, outside of Russ, the offensive MVP of this team.
So since you took Tim Patrick, which was like 1A for me, I'm going to go with the guy in the right-hand corner. I'm going to go with Alex Singleton. I think him being on not a 1-year contract, he's now on a 3-year contract. So he's not having to prove himself anymore. Mm-hmm. He's going to be able to gel with Honey Bear, Josie Jewell, for another couple seasons. And him pairing with Josie Jewell and being able to get those tackles, fill those holes, stop the run is gonna allow.
That's what she said.
We've tried so hard for Honey Bear to catch on. Right? This is the year.
I'm trying. But him partnering with Josie Jewell and being able to stuff the run and plug the holes and make the tackles is going to make it easier, especially in a Vance Joseph defense, for the corners to be able to do what they need to do, the safeties to be able to stay back and do what they need to do, let the edge rushers get to the quarterback and not have to worry as much about stopping the run because you have those middle linebackers that are able to do that. So I think Alex Singleton is going to be the X factor for me.
So if I could throw in an honorable mention,
Mm-hmm.
Javonte Williams. I mean, you've got George Payton initially saying that he's ready for the beginning of the season.
Quite the back.
And then the next time we see George, like he completely backs off that without giving any sort of remote specifics about when that could actually happen. I mean, look at our running back room at this point.
Yep.
We haven't even picked up Latavius Murray. Is Javonte that close that the team is not particularly worried about adding? That is a major position of need on this team.
I mean, you have to think that they're. I'm not going to say draft because obviously, with only having starting in the third round, you go best player available, right? So you have to think that Denver is waiting
BPA,
for prices. Yeah, for prices to drop so that they can get a running back in the second wave of free agency, right?
No, I wouldn't.
What wave are we in right now? We're like in the.
We had the initial wave.
There's no wave. It's just
now there's the lull, and then draft, and then the second wave.
Ripple.
But
it's a ripple.
How can you like after the draft? If Kareem Hunt is still available, if these Latavius Murray, like these running backs that are available, why would you not go and get them?
But the thing is like we still have the draft, and this is a pretty decent running back crop that, like, depending on who they draft, like that could also say where Javonte Williams is at. Like, for instance, if they draft Zach Charbonnet, like if you guys get a chance to watch Zach Charbonnet, like it almost feels like he's a little bit of a carbon copy of a Javonte Williams. And so like if they draft him, that should tell us maybe one about how they feel about Javonte Williams and his recovery, and then maybe what it could be because of that injury, his future in Denver. Like, so like, but I would not discount the draft like at all with this. And I think at that point I would say it's far more likely they draft a back.
I'm fully expecting them to come out of the draft with a running back. I just like, for me, it's like you have, and again, personal issues aside, I'm just looking at the player, but like if Kareem Hunt is there, how do you not make a swing? You know what I'm saying?
It's because they feel like the draft options where you can get a pass catching back anywhere, which feels like it's pretty loaded there. It's way easier to get one there than it is to sign Kareem Hunt, so.
What is he asking for that he's unsigned at this point?
I don't know.
I mean, I would have thought that he would have been picked up. Not only was he absolutely destroying when he was with Kansas City, and then they let him go for obvious reasons. Cleveland, the hometown team, picked him up, and he was playing behind Nick Chubb. I mean, there's not a lot of tread worn off those tires the last few years.
I would almost wonder if it's because of that.
I can't imagine. He already had a job.
And that's what's
still working.
You look at teams that could use a running back like Kareem Hunt. Like, why have the Lions not stepped in? Why have the Jets not gone after him? Why have the Broncos not gone and got, like, the Falcons? There are so many teams that could use a running back. Why is he still there?
It's got to be. His price tag has to be.
Well, so it's probably a mixture of everything, and maybe price tag. It's not just the Broncos that are looking at the draft class potentially for a running back. It's also probably the other teams are looking at the draft, and then after the undrafted pool and so on and so forth. That's when they'll talk again, and potentially sign them to like a 1 year $5 million deal, or 1 year $4 million deal. So I don't know. I'm more curious of what is going on with this Broncos room and the tight ends right now. Like, that's kind of like, one that's like, I'm really curious about what's going on. Cause like, I'm actually convinced, and this is a deep tight end class, but like, I am full on convinced the Broncos are drafting a tight end in this draft. Like, and I definitely understand it. It's just one like the Broncos are not like hiding at all that they are certainly interest in it. They're showing interest in like these tight ends. Like apparently Luke Musgrave, the guy from Oregon State who's related to Bill Musgrave, Schoonmaker from Michigan. So I mean, like they're not hiding this interest in tight ends.
Is Dulcich one then?
I don't know.
Who's two?
I would almost say that like unless they just view Dulcich solely as a wide receiver, if you will. I use air quotes, because I mean, like that was the big thing when he had Jeremy Shockey, was like, Shockey was like, was he really a tight end or was he a wide receiver? So I mean, it's probably one like, do they feel like they're lacking in say like a little bit more of a well-rounded tight end, and so they're looking at some guys like, a Schoonmaker or maybe a Luke Musgrave, but Luke Musgrave's a pass catching tight end. So like that's the thing that's just so weird about it.
Well, we still have Dulcich and Alberto, right?
Mm-hmm. Right now, at least for Alberto's perspective.
Didn't we sign another one? I thought we brought in another tight end.
Manhurts.
Okay.
No, sorry. It was Manhurts and Little Jordan Humphrey, I think, because Little Jordan Humphrey's like that hybrid, if you will.
Well, he's considered a wide receiver, but he's huge.
Yeah.
He's not little. He's not Lil. He's not little. He's big. He's a big dude.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just assuming that Dulcich is one. With what we saw last year, I'm going to assume Dulcich is tight end one, which would put Alberto at 2. How many do you need? 4? 5?
What? It all depends on Peyton, right? Like that's the thing. It all depends on Peyton because, even his recent comments, which didn't seem like a total like praiseworthy comment in terms of Greg Dulcich, like it wasn't like really like an earth-shattering compliment by any means for Dulcich, and so it's one of those things like. I'm kind of curious what's going to happen with that tight end room. And we all know about Alberto Cuebanam too. So like, it's kind of it's understandable from that point, maybe why they would look at the tight end room.
I'm with Cam. When Peyton mentioned that he had split ends, I thought, this guy doesn't care for Dulcich too much.
He's stupid.
And now we're off
that amused me way more than it should have.
That was not.
No. So spinning around the NFL real quick, we did get some word from Damar Hamlin. He is cleared to practice with the Bills. So he was back at practice today. Said his goal is to be back on the team full time, back to playing football. You would assume that if he's able to practice, I mean, obviously there's no pads, there's no hitting, but with him being back at practice, there's a good chance that he's going to play at some point in the next couple of years.
With him back,
if not this season.
Well, I think the plan is for him to play this season, or at least his plan is to play this season. And what's great is with this whole situation is Buffalo now actually has his body double on the practice squad. So like we have like a 2-for-1 special with him coming back. So this is great news.
Yeah. It's just the whole story is just a fantastic story, and if he plays great with Buffalo, you're definitely looking at the instant comeback player of the year true story with Hamlin, and he's gonna be a fun watch for Buffalo because he was also a really good player with Buffalo, and so to see him come back, I think a lot of like all of us we're kind of like interested to see what will he do post that injury, and will he be the same player? And we're kind of like having that same overall debate with Javonte Williams, right? Like, will he be the same running back? But for Damar Hamlin, will he be the same player that he was with Buffalo? It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, with all that money he got donated to his foundation, he could be writing checks left and right. And if he plays well, he could win comeback player of the year and Walter Payton man of the year in the same season. This could be NFL honors, baby. No, I was
throwing an MVP just cuz.
All kidding aside, I'm really happy for him. That was one of the scariest things I've ever seen on live television, without question. And
what did he call it that he had? It was.
Oh gosh. I don't know. It was
I had it pulled up.
The medical term I don't know, but it was being hit in the heart at the same time at a particular time when your heart is beating. And he did reference that is the biggest cause of death among young athletes. And so that was one of the initiatives that he's going to be working on. And I think the defibrillator situation and lack thereof in certain areas and schools and things like that and workplaces that
commodio cordis, commodio cordis or something like that is what he called it.
Yeah,
a direct blow at a specific point in your heartbeat that causes cardiac arrest.
And you would think that would happen more often. I mean, but thank goodness it hasn't.
Yeah. Well, and saying like the same thing we talked about earlier the season when that happened. Like I'm hoping that the NFL is reviewing padding in the chest area and adding some.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's one of the things, not just us, but that's like one of the big things was mentioned like everywhere was like, what is the NFL going to do about this? Are they going to have that extra security, if you will, with that chest area? So it'll be really interesting to see sort of how the NFL adapts to it, especially considering we're talking about the largest sports entity in the world, that truly appears like cares about player safety. So it'll be quite interesting.
Yeah. And then some more news. The Steelers and the Rams made a trade. The Steelers got wide receiver Allen Robinson from the Rams on the move again.
Please don't call it a trade. I mean, this was like a handoff. I mean, the Rams are basically paying most of his salary, and I think that all they had to do was just switch positions in one round of the draft. I mean, it was just. I
think the Rams are paying like 10.5, and the Steelers are paying 5 or something like that. So basically, the Rams are paying Allen Robinson to play for the Steelers.
He's gonna do a good job too. Man, the LA Ram experiment did not work out well.
Yeah. It was basically one that was like, it was like I was surprised like how small that trade was. Like it was like the Tim Patrick. Geez, we're going to Broncos themed, right? It's the Patrick themed gift from SpongeBob. I have $3. Like that's basically what the deal was. Like it was just chump change. Like it was just like it was just truly nothing. So I'm interested though, because it was one that like they could have drafted a wide receiver, Pittsburgh. They probably still could, but it also probably shows you how much they believe in Kenny Pickett, and that they want to give him like that kind of guy in A-Rob.
I was gonna say, who else do they even have as receiver? They didn't have anybody last year.
They do actually,
because they had
George Pickens,
but then they got rid of. They didn't have Juju Smith-Schuster anymore. Who did they have last year?
That was like
James Washington is gone.
Yeah,
Calvin Austin.
Wow. Okay.
Plaxico Burress is gone, and I think Lynn Swan is no longer with the team.
Antonio Brown's not there anymore. All right, and then the Chiefs jump into the headlines, signing an absolute clone of Patrick Mahomes with Blaine Gabbert. Completely the same playing style. You can't even tell the difference.
Those Missouri quarterbacks, man, they last forever in the NFL for some reason. Chase Daniel has lasted in the NFL for, I don't know how long. And now Gabbert's been sticking around. That draft class with Gabbert was just terrible.
Yeah.
You know what Missouri quarterback will probably keep that from continuing? Drew Lock.
No,
I'm getting bombed.
Bree, if you're listening, you're missing the other big NFL news, Mike.
Depends on your definition of big, I guess.
A big contract extension?
Oh, well. That's just because it makes Lamar Jackson look even dumber, but that's fine.
Oh my gosh, I know. Like it just.
So Jalen Hurts got what, a 5-year extension for $255? Is that what it was?
Yes.
Yeah.
So $5,255,000, and like Pat McAfee was going over it on his show with Ian Rappaport, and they broke it down and was like the last contract offer that Lamar Jackson received from the Ravens was bigger in every aspect than the one that Jalen Hurts just got.
Yeah.
Like guarantees, injuries, per year money, like everything. I don't get it. Like at this point, you blame Lamar Jackson, right? Is there anybody else to blame?
Yeah. No.
I mean, I didn't mean to spin off on a Lamar Jackson thing, but
no.
You look at the Jalen Hurts contract. Is there anybody else to blame?
Mike, what's more incredible about Jalen's contract is it's an extension. So that starts after the rookie year contract this year. I mean, it's an unbelievable deal. And he's young enough that he's going to get another contract after this. I'm happy for him. I think he
gets $180 guaranteed.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And truly, I mean, we definitely say that there's no person to blame except for Lamar Jackson, and that's because he's his own agent. I mean, he operates like on this weird level, and it's something that you've rarely seen. I mean, Russell Okung, was his own agent, and he wasn't as rigid, should we say, like as Lamar Jackson, and and both of them, played premier positions. So it's just one that's just like at one point it was like you kind of understand with Lamar, and then but when you start realizing that maybe Baltimore did play this right, like franchise tagging him, doing the non-exclusive tag, and then basically having him have the right to speak to other teams, and then at that point basically set the market for not just himself but the Baltimore Ravens for signing that potential deal with the Ravens, because I mean, like and when you don't have an agent, like that's a nice little avenue to go to for that. So
yeah,
I mean, nobody is going to get to Deshaun. Yeah,
well, that makes Jalen Hurts the highest paid quarterback and player in the league. Like he now is higher than Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson got more guaranteed, but
still
Jalen Hurts makes more per year.
Not yet.
Yep.
Not yet.
With the extension, he makes more than Deshaun Watson does.
Well, I think, but when that extension actually kicks in, you're going to have a Joe Burrow contract that's going to be. Florio this morning, he was on with Chris Sims. They were speculating that that Burrow contract could be the first percentage of the cap contract in the NFL, meaning he could get, say, 16%. They use like 16.2587. Like they just rolled on the number of the Bengals cap would be Burrow's contract. And so as that cap
just
grows,
per year,
it adjusts, and the team knows what they're exposed to, or at least have available for the other players. And that's a pretty cool concept, actually.
But to circle back on Jalen Hurts, what a tremendous story. He's earned this contract. He's a player that I think, if you go back and you watch his college tape, how are you not a fan of a guy like this? I mean, the guy was a pros pro with Alabama. I mean,
rigid old fart. Man.
He was like the true teammate for Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, the transfers over to Oklahoma, basically kind of converts himself in a way like Dak Prescott, like being like that kind of like true passer, really shows himself with the Philadelphia Brass to be drafted. When they had Carson Wentz, he becomes the guy. And for anybody that was truly doubting Jalen Hurts, or I should say still doubting Jalen Hurts, there was a game that sits in the back of my mind, that I would go back and watch. And that was the game. Bronco fans should know this well, but it was the Bronco game in 2021 where he absolutely destroyed that Broncos secondary. Like it was the Devontae Smith, and Pat Surtain, what do you do? Like the coverage was just spectacular enough that it was just like, what do you do? And so that was just on point that Jalen Hurts was, really the moment from he stepped foot on the football field. And so, yeah, so kudos to him for truly becoming the player that he is now. And, it's a huge testament of patience, 100%.
So, quick question. Who votes for the MVP in the NFL?
Me.
Shut up. Because for me, Jalen Hurts should have gotten MVP more than Patrick Mahomes did.
Mm-hmm.
But
I don't know, man. I mean, Mahomes, I know the vote happened prior to the Super Bowl, but Mahomes lost all his weapons but Kelsey, if you think about it, and still performed even better than when he had a Tyreek Hill and a Juju. And I know he had Juju in the last year.
I completely get it. I feel like the Eagles went farther than they should have.
Right.
Because of Jalen Hurts. I feel like Jalen Hurts is more valuable to his team than Patrick Mahomes was.
No, and I don't think if he had won it, Sports Nonsense actually makes a very good point. Remember, he was on track for MVP consideration and then missed some games at the end of the season. But I mean, just like Cam said, the way things fell out in Alabama when he got pulled from that game, and then the Tua star just started rising in that same night. Just how he carried himself and just the fact that, he's led his team, second round pick, leads his team to the Super Bowl, gets this great contract with this awesome security. I mean, I'm just I couldn't be happier for him. Just if you think about other quarterbacks that maybe could have been in that position, I mean, just my hat's off to him. I'm really happy for the guy.
And by the way, what's awesome too is the agent. I forget her name, but she's also an OU alum. And so that's the cool thing about it is she's an OU alum. And I think her first big deal truly as an agent is with Jalen Hurts, a former Oklahoma Sooners quarterback. That's kind of the nice little touch on all of this with both.
It's like Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
I don't think it's her first big deal. I mean, her name is Nicole Lynn, but
okay.
She she had Quinnen Williams and she's had some other big names, but she texted him or she messaged him a few weeks before the draft asking if she could be his agent. That was a pretty cool story.
Yeah.
Clayton says he still smells a 10-13 win season for the Broncos.
Dude, I'm with you, man. I think a double-digit season is definitely going to happen this year.
Depends on center.
You said X Factor. There you go. You said the center.
Yeah, he's the negative X Factor. I'm talking about a positive one.
Yeah. By the way, we were talking about the X Factors earlier. One guy that I think is an honorable mention for me. I know Bronco Bill mentioned Surtain. For me, if you're going to go off of an X Factor, because he was one of the guys I thought of, is the guy opposite him, Damari Mathis. So I would put Damari Mathis in that X Factor as well, and especially kind of the year that he had.
Is he going to be 2 though, or is it going to be K'Wan Williams?
No, K'Wan Williams is your slot, your slot corner, I would say. But and also he seems to be with the favor of George Payton. I mean, Payton went on in one of his pressers to just go on and just say he's a starting level corner. We are very comfortable of being a starter, in this league. And I mean, they moved on from Ronald Darby, right? And Ronald Darby, when he was, healthy, was a pretty good corner for the Broncos. Yeah. But he just kept getting injured. And so that's enough of your sign that they are fine giving, this, reins to Mathis.
Darby's still available, by the way.
He's another one.
Oh,
he's good. He was good when healthy.
When healthy, we can count on him for 5 games a season. Woo!
Well, keep in mind the Broncos have gone through a major, wipe through of that entire, health department, and training department. So
they did. That's pretty nutty. I'm excited to see. Well, I guess I'm not excited. I'm excited to not see injuries. There you go. We'll go with that. We'll see if that's what happens.
They're just there doing jumping jacks for now going, it doesn't feel like.
There you go. All right, so that's going to about do it for us. I think we covered everything. Make sure that you like, subscribe, turn on notifications, share it with your friends, talk about us, go to the merch store and buy merch. We got more merch coming because we got some new podcasts to join the network. So make sure you check that out. We got shows basically every day. We've got the Cluster Puck on Monday. We've got the 5280 Sports Nonsense and Whiskey on Tuesday. You've got, now I got to remember. You've got the Wild Wild West on Wednesday. You've got mainly Broncos right after that on Wednesday. You've got BPA on Thursday. You've got Broncos Breakdown, Bronco Bill on Friday. And then you've got the Neighborhood that covers Avalanche and Broncos games. The Neighborhood is going to be live tonight. We're doing all the Avalanche playoff games, so make sure you tune into that. So that'll be fun. It's going to be late, but it's going to be fun. I'm actually going to pull up, if I can find it. Avatar put a chat in here about players that are playing tonight, and I can't find it.
Way up top.
I know, I am way up top.
That's what she said.
Dun, dun, dun. How would you know? Boom, got it. There we go.
The best
The only player on the injury list is Landeskog. They have McDermott, Eric Johnson, Hunt, Helm, and Myers are healthy scratches. So that means we're going to have all the players back. I think McCarr was injured there for a little bit. So it sounds like he's back. So make sure you tune in and watch the Nuggets in the playoffs, watch the Avs in the playoffs, and then in a few, 6 months, you'll see the Broncos in the playoffs. It's going to be – I'm not even going to talk about the Rockies. We'll just leave it there.
And Sports Nonsense and Whiskey coming up next.
Sports Nonsense and Whiskey coming up next. We'll see you guys later. Peace out!
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, go.